Read Marcus Aurelius. Of each particular thing, ask, what is it in itself? What is its nature?
Some characters just hit different. Dr. Hannibal Lecter was voted the #1 movie villain of all time by the American Film Institute, with Anthony Hopkins winning a Best Actor Oscar in 1992 for a performance that lasted less than 16 minutes on screen. But what is it about this character that captivates audiences around the world? Is it how it's written or how it's performed? Is it the character's ghoulish acts of violence or the psychological games he plays? Do we want to understand his origin, or does our imagination fill in the blanks in a more terrifying way? Let's examine how Dr. Hannibal Lecter was originally conceptualized by the author Thomas Harris. Then we'll explore the origin of the character and how he was performed by Sir Anthony Hopkins, before dissecting the types of psychological games he plays over the course of 3 movies. Lecter is an unusual fictional character, not just because he's a psychopathic serial-killing cannibal psychiatrist, but the fact that he was originally written as a fully formed adult, then famously portrayed in cinema, and then the origin of the character was written afterwards. The novels came out in the following order. Then the movies were released in a different order. So the cinematic timeline of the character is unusual. The audience first met Hannibal Lecter after he was already captured, then followed his escape and aftermath, then went back to before he was imprisoned, then went back even further to his childhood before he ever killed anybody, seeming to lose their appetite for the character with each new installation. Author Thomas Harris loosely based the character on William Coyne, who had escaped prison in 1934 and gone on a rampage in Cleveland that included acts of murder and cannibalism. He stated, "Everything has happened, nothing's made up. You don't have to make anything up in this world." But it was inside a Mexican prison in 1973 that he met the character that inspired the tone and personality of Lecter.
When I went to the Nuevo Leon State Prison, I encountered a doctor there. The person I was interviewing, Dyke Simmons, had been shot in the prison by a guard whom he had paid to escape, and then the guard just shot him, kept the money. This doctor saved him.
Harris went on to meet this doctor, who had a certain elegance about him. He discussed the surviving patient, Dyke Simmons' disfigured appearance in a cutting manner, asking, "Do you think Simmons was tormented on the school playground because he was disfigured?" When Harris said he probably was, the doctor asked whether Simmons' victims were attractive. After Harris said they were and asked whether he was suggesting they provoked Simmons, the doctor responded, "Certainly not, but early torment makes torment easily imagined." He went on to ask, "You are a journalist, Mr. Harris. How would you put that in your journal? How do you treat the fear of torment in journalese? Might you say something snappy about torment, like it puts the hell in hello?" It was only after leaving the prison that Harris discovered the doctor was actually a murderer being kept in prison due to his insanity. The warden told him as they were leaving, "The doctor is a murderer. As a surgeon, he could package his victim in a surprisingly small box. He will never leave this place. He's insane." What was more unusual was that this doctor was trusted with patients and treated many of the poor locals for free from outside the confines of the prison. This true story is what inspired Harris to write about a detective talking to somebody with a peculiar understanding of the criminal mind. In 2006, he went back to write the character's origin story, which retroactively explains a lot of what makes the character tick. Hannibal Lecter was born into a wealthy aristocratic family in Lithuania, having a strong bond with his younger sister Misha. In 1941, the family castle was overrun by Nazi forces, causing the family to flee to the forest, where they lived for many years. His parents were killed after a bombing, and Hannibal and his sister Misha were held captive by a group of local criminals. When the food supply finally ran out, they killed and cannibalized Hannibal's younger sister Misha in front of him. He managed to escape, but was severely traumatized. He suffered from PTSD in an orphanage, where he was bullied and attacked by the other orphans, until he was adopted by his uncle, Robert Lecter. He formed a close connection with his aunt, falling in love with her, and when a local obscenely insulted her, Hannibal retaliated by murdering the culprit, filleting and eating his cheeks. He later returned to Lithuania and took revenge on his sister's killers. A clear pattern in Harris's writing of Lecter is his strong connection with women. Perhaps from the trauma of seeing his beloved sister killed and eaten, Hannibal continuously forms bonds with female characters whom he is very defensive of. This is what makes insulting his aunt a crime punishable by death, and when Miggs disrespects Clarice Starling, Lecter takes revenge by manipulating Miggs into choking on his own tongue. His relationship with Clarice could be viewed as a projection of his loving bond with his sister, as Clarice is so well-intentioned that he relates her moral compass to the purity of a child like Misha. Although everyone who watches the movies can easily see that Lecter is a psychopath, his character's early life doesn't fit the mold of a traditional psychopath, and he possesses several psychological disorders: post-traumatic stress disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, and antisocial personality disorder. But when it comes to the cinematic portrayal by Anthony Hopkins, you can pretty much throw all of that backstory out, as not only was it not yet written by Harris, but even if it were, Hopkins insisted back then that he did no research.
Do any case studies of some of these serial killers?
No, too distasteful. I didn't do any research.
Lecter has been portrayed by actors Brian Cox and Mads Mikkelsen too, but Hopkins based his performance on three major influences: Truman Capote, Katharine Hepburn, and Hal the Computer in 2001: A Space Odyssey.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Good evening, Clarice.
Hopkins believed that the scariest way to play a character who commits such heinous acts isn't that they are aggressive or cackling or stark raving mad, but instead to play it straight. Play it in a way the audience don't expect, as it disturbs us much more to see that the monster doesn't always stand out, but more terrifyingly blends in with the rest of society. It was actually Hopkins' idea that when we first meet Lecter, that he's standing perfectly straight in the middle of his cell. Once the security door closes behind Clarice, she has to walk past the other cells. Each step forward signifies a step towards the darkest depths of the human psyche, and after the other more stereotypically deranged and chaotic inmates, we are met with something more stoic yet peculiar, as if he's been waiting for her. As a psychiatrist, Lecter loves to psychologically toy with everyone around him and has several techniques he uses throughout each movie. He always asserts his intellectual dominance by showing he's a step ahead.
You were doing fine. You had been courteous and receptive to courtesy. You had established trust with the embarrassing truth about Miggs.
Whatever tactic you're trying to employ on him is useless, as he can see things in you that tell him about your past, and anything you discuss in the present helps him to accurately predict your future decisions.
And now this ham-handed segue into your questionnaire. It won't do.
His calculated nature makes every sentence a potential trap, as if he's luring you into his web. Lecter prides himself on predicting your behavior.
You use Evian skin cream. And sometimes you wear lead tone.
As if he already knows you so well, he sees something in you that you don't want anyone to see. Because he believes he is so much smarter than his prey, he's happy to play with his food until the last second. He'll help Will with the investigation right up until he realizes the truth. And he'll let Inspector Ronaldo hunt him down so he can enjoy the thrill of the chase and suck every last drop of pleasure out of the process. He manipulates you by instructing your mind constantly.
Sit, tell me. You send that through now. You fly back to school now, little starling.
Almost like guided meditation, even during his attacks.
Don't move. You're in shock now. In a moment, you'll begin to be lightheaded.
This way, he asserts constant control over everything, a manifestation of his narcissism and disregard for others.
Because it makes him God. Would you give that up?
But what Lecter actually craves is intimacy, an uncomfortable connection between himself and his prey. His questions always cut to the root of their character. He's verbally poking around in areas you're uncomfortable with. The things you would normally resist talking to others about is all he's interested in.
Did you nurse Catherine yourself?
What is your worst memory of childhood?
So their guiding motivations become more predictable, which puts him in control. But he's insatiable. He wants to psychologically devour the deepest parts of you until it's not enough for him anymore. Then it's about the obsession of physical touch. The slightest glance of contact is almost seductive. He's captivated by the scent, the patterns, the behaviors of human beings. He forces this intimacy onto anyone he speaks to. And then when he has a chance to strike, he inflicts physical intimacy on them too, as eating someone's flesh is the most intimate act there is. You're being psychologically and physically pulled into his web. Even the framing of these shots gently presses in, closer and closer.
Closer.
This is what makes Lecter so captivating to audiences. He looks at you the same way a lion looks at a gazelle, and he talks to you with a cold clinical detachment, while simultaneously forcing his way into the most intimate corners of your mind. It becomes futile to resist, but he's so elegant you almost don't want to, which is what makes him one of fiction's greatest manifestations of our deepest fears, that we could be lured into a trap by someone who on the surface seems unusually charming, but is capable of such unspeakable acts. But what do you think makes Hannibal Lecter tick? Is Hopkins' portrayal of him the greatest movie villain of all time, and did the sequels detract from it or add to it? And if you made it this far, I would appreciate it if you liked the video and potentially even subscribed if you're feeling crazy enough.